Coming up tonight on Game All Night, Liz Davidson of Beyond Solitaire. This Week and Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers. Check them out on Kickstarter starting June 25th.
Welcome to Game All Night.
Well, hello and welcome, faithful viewers, to yet another episode of Game All Night. I am joined always by my co-host Dan, and I am Chris Whitpan. Dan, what is in the glass this evening, sir?
Oh, I'm kind of excited here.
Are you now?
Because we're doing a double feature from really what's, I guess, the premier local brewery for those of us out in the western suburbs of Philadelphia. Certainly, it's been there for me ever since I've been into craft beer. Is Victory Brewing right out of Downingtown, and we've got a couple of their newer beers, a couple of things. They both debuted within the last calendar year, certainly. So
Excellent.
So for you, I have poured their No Brainer IPA. Now, this is Victory's entry into the Citra Centennial scene that so many breweries are doing these days. I think this is a new year-round beer for them. It's not just a seasonal IPA, but a very different profile than their classic Hop Devil and other bitter offerings they usually have.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I still might like Headwaters slightly better, you know, if I'm going to get that fine a point, but, you know, that's just a hop preference, probably.
Yeah, and they're coming into, like, you know, Headwaters is probably a little bit lighter ABV, a little bit more session-y, and this is... Right. So it's slightly different, hitting slightly different spots, but, you know, it depends how many different tiers of IPA you're looking for in your life.
Exactly. What are you drinking, sir?
So I'm a big fan of the Victory. At this point, it's a Monkey series, I guess. Golden Monkey is one of the absolute classics. And then when they introduced Sour Monkey a few years back, I've not been able to get enough of it. And now they've added Twisted Monkey. So in this case, they're using the same Belgian yeast that they use for Golden Monkey and Sour Monkey, this time using it to make a Belgian blonde. So this is coming in at a much lower ABV than those are, and they've added a little mango to that. So a Belgian blonde with a little bit of fruitiness, and it's really nicely balanced. Yeah,
I found it kind of interesting. I had it over the weekend myself, but we can yammer all day. I mean, one day we have to talk about the tour I did of the brewery. Stuff. It was a little personal backstage tour. I really don't remember much of it because it was fabulous. But I'm sure Liz has to be drinking something tonight. So let's bring her on. Miss Liz Davidson of Beyond Solitaire. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am fabulous. So are you enjoying anything with us this evening?
I am. I had a sweet tooth tonight, so I'm having a Strongbow Gold Apple.
Strongbow. I love Strongbow. Do you like to mix it with anything? Do you like to do like a little, like, you know, Black Velvet or anything along those lines?
Typically, I just drink it straight out of the bottle. I'm a very simple woman, you know.
There is nothing wrong with that. Now, do you find you go to the flavored ciders a lot?
Mostly apple or pear, but I do like some ciders. They're always just pleasant. It's summer. They're cool. They're a little sugary. And other than that, I like beer. I'm not really a wine person. I have no palate at all.
You know, wine is great. Like, I don't know. There's something different. I can be in a wine mood, but sometimes I just like beer, and ciders. Ciders work for me too. I tend to enjoy them myself. So good choice. No complaints. No complaints.
Has decided to crawl into my desk, and it's a problem. Get over here. This is Kato.
Oh.
We've had him about a week.
He's adorable.
He likes to make trouble.
Well, most kittens tend to. They're testing their boundaries, and that's cool.
It's part of his charm. It's cute right now because he's only like 2 pounds.
You can like literally pick him up with a finger at this point.
Oh yeah, you just whoop, grab him.
So how many is that for you? How many fur babies do you have?
We have 2 cats and a hamster.
A hamster. So,
yes.
So where does the red panda from Beyond Solitaire figure in? I assume you didn't have one of those at any time, right?
Well, I can't legally talk about no. I actually chose the red panda because I was thinking, I want to have kind of a cute, distinctive looking logo.
Right.
Why don't I look up a list of solitary animals and see which ones I think would look cool as a logo? And it turns out that red pandas are solitary. But I've also seen so many YouTube videos of them playing and, being goofy that I was like, oh, playful, solitary, perfect. That's a great logo for Beyond Solitaire.
No, that's very interesting. And then who did the artwork for it?
I actually went on Fiverr and hired someone whose samples I really liked.
There you go. It's funny, there's in this day and age, a lot of people will go out of their way to try and clean up artwork or buy it, but you can go get like the nicest stuff on Fiverr for not that much. And it winds up now you own it and you don't have to worry about using it. So smart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually got it with like a whole, it's like, all my YouTube banners and stuff. It came with like a social media kit. So the person who made that logo made the whole shtick, business cards, all of it.
Wow. That's kind of impressive. And I'm sure it's a little more than $5, but it's still compared to like going out and hiring somebody, off the boat, that can be tough. So it's awesome. We talk about upstarts a lot because we're all new to the business, and some people just have the knack to be able to do graphics, and some people need a little help. And that's one of the best ways to get it. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I could barely color inside the lines as a kid, so there's no way I'm making a logo.
That's awesome. So speaking of Beyond Solitaire, then, what really prompted you to want to start a channel? I mean, now we've already had Mike Delisio, Copycat. We like to call him around here the Copycat.
The other solo gamer for Dice Tower. Yeah.
Yeah. He's not the preeminent solo gamer. He only watches his episode once a month. And I see that because I see the views. That's the only one he watches. So you don't have to worry about him watching this one. He's just like, how good do I look today? But anyway, what prompted you to want to get into solo gaming as a form of media output, I guess is the best way to put it?
So I think solo gaming is sort of interesting because we play alone. Mm-hmm. But when you play by yourself, then you want to talk to somebody about your experience of playing. So I think that solo gamer is one of the reasons the solo guild is so big on Board Game Geek, and the solo Facebook groups are huge, is that we all play alone, but then we want to discuss it with other people who do the same thing. So, I initially just started a blog because I wanted to hang out online with other people who are doing the same thing that I was doing. And I just wanted to make gamer friends. And fortunately that happened.
Interesting. Now, do you think that kind of comes out of the fact that, like, one of the reasons I would argue that I enjoy board gaming is that it gives me a chance to interact with somebody and it gives me a forum. Like, I can choose to sit with my wife and watch TV and be mostly silent for the evening, or we can play and interact and play over a game and have that time, right? So do you kind of feel that people who solo game still need that component of that? So they kind of seek out like the other groups and things like that to kind of fill that half of the need. Like, they got a game out, now I need to have the social piece of it.
I don't think you need it. For me, so I want to see who ended up solo gaming because my desire to game outpaced my opportunities to play games. So I have a game group. I actually sponsor a game club at every school I ever work at, and end up playing with students and teaching them games. I find a lot of opportunities to play. It's just that I want to play at weird times, or I want to play games that nobody else wants to play. And if you spend all your time waiting for the right time or the people who will humor you, then you never get to do what you really want to do.
Yeah. That's funny, because I think there's a lot of times people hit that point where, exactly like you say, your desire to play outpaces, meet up or your groups or your friends, or you want to play things that they don't necessarily want to play. And you chose to go in the solo game road. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I also like it. I mean, to me, solo gaming is akin to, maybe reading a novel or doing something that's more interactive than just watching TV, but also a little bit different from like working a jigsaw puzzle or something like that. It's like a nice activity that works my brain a little bit, but I don't necessarily have to do anything with other people. It's like a me time thing.
Gotcha.
So I'm curious, Chris. You mentioned Liz made reference to the solo guild on BGG, and now I know Chris is much less of a solo gamer than either you or I are. So I didn't know if you were aware of like the solo games on your table monthly list and the activity in that guild. There's a whole lot of people gathering in a common thread and sharing their experiences each month of what they've played and really like miniaturized session reports on how those games went. It's one of my favorite sections of BGG.
Yeah, I love to read it, and I always mean to post in it and then just don't. I have a few posts on there.
There's something to be said, too, about trying to develop, like, written posts in forums and keeping that up. That's not as easy as it sounds. It seems to be a lot of work. Like, if you want to do, like, a how to play or do written reviews, props to the people who do, because to me, like, putting words to paper just takes so long. I really struggle with that. So, seeing all that online and seeing a lot of the content that people put out is just a lot of work. So you did some blogging too about it before you got into the video side.
Yeah, I actually started out as a blogger, and I had a Twitter account and I got an Instagram account and was just trying to connect with people. And Sam Healy actually put out a call for looking for more female contributors to Throw Punch Lunch back when that was a thing.
Right.
And I saw it and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to email him because why not? And I did. And then I started making small segments. And then it was probably another year before I felt driven to put my first actual playthrough online. So probably October 2017 was my first video on YouTube. Like, that was on my channel, and it was I think it was a playthrough of Sagrada.
Okay. So basically what you're doing is you're kind of doing a playthrough with, are you doing like a playthrough teach kind of style, like teach as you go, or are you kind of telling people how to play a solo version? Because maybe a lot of people don't realize that they have a lot of games that they can solo. They're just not.
Yeah. So on my site, you'll get just different sorts of posts, mostly reviews of games. So if you want to know what I really think about a game and actually see like a rating, then I do that in writing, and you can see that on my blog. But games that I liked enough to film also end up getting what I now call just how to solo videos. So I will do, I'll walk you through setup, and I'll either do a few turns or a full playthrough, depending on how long the game is taking, how big it is, my mood. And the idea is to show you how the solo mode works, how it plays, and so you can give you a sense of the rhythm of that game. So if you want to play solo, you can kind of decide for yourself.
All right. So it kind of leads me to ask the question, what are your favorite kind of, games to solo? When I say that, I'm kind of meaning more like, do you look to just play against a game like, say, Captain Nemo, where you're playing against just the game itself? Or do you like a game that kind of pits a virtual opponent, like maybe Fleet Dice would or something like that? What kind do you gravitate towards?
Ooh, so I'm actually an omnigamer. I will try anything that's snappy and good and that really engages me while I'm playing it. So one of the reasons I decided to go with a solo site, partially because if you're playing solo, it's so much easier to test the games and film them because you're not dependent on a game group for your review. Sure. But I like a huge range of games. So if I have a lot of time, I really like big, sprawling fantasy games.
Okay.
I like a good Gloomhaven session. I've been getting more into war games, which I actually surprised myself with that. I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. I love ancient history. But I also just love little roll and writes, really light, quick, puzzly, get a pencil out, play while you're waiting for your food at a restaurant, play at Starbucks sort of games. So
interesting.
If it's good, I'll like it probably.
Now, how do you feel? Like, the one struggle that I have personally is, sometimes it feels like you take all this time to set it up. And because definitely there seems to be more involved setups with, setting up the AIs and getting things out and predetermined setups. You don't have anybody to help you. It's like, hey, shuffle those 3 decks. At least you can point somebody to do something, right? But in a solo game, that's all on you. Do you find that kind of slows down the experience, or do you leave something up? Like, how do you kind of handle that? Or is it just kind of brain numb time?
So I don't mind doing setup. I find it sort of therapeutic just because, you're doing something a little bit mindless. Or, if it's a game that's new to me, I actually find that I learn a lot more about the game by thinking my way through setup and then talking people through setup. It's actually in my game teaching, one of my biggest weaknesses is remembering how to set up. I always have to check the rules for that. So I think it's not a bad thing for me to practice. And in some ways it's kind of nice because like my games stay organized the way I like them.
Right.
And I'm a little persnickety about that kind of stuff. But I cannot leave them out because I'm a cat owner and there's just no way.
You can't shut off the room and like leave Gloomhaven set up for a month at a time. It's just not happening.
No, although we are moving in the middle of next month and I'm kind of hoping. So right now, the best place for me to play games is at my kitchen table. Technically like the second bedroom is my office. So I'm hoping that in the next place I can get a setup going in there so that I can actually start doing that sort of thing.
Who needs a desk? I mean, come on, just you put a shelf on a wall and you make yourself a new standing desk, and then you can leave the game set up all the time. It'll be fine.
Perfect. It'll be great.
Right? It's
everyone just works on their laptop anyway. Just lie on the couch.
Exactly. I mean, your lap gets warm, but it still works.
That just attracts the cats later. It's fine.
There you go. I don't know about you, but like my cat goes through moods. Like if I'm at a desk and I'm working, because I can work from home occasionally, he just needs to be nearby, but he's not going to mess with me. But the minute I go to the couch, he's kind of like, oh no, he's in your lap, and you're kind of like, well, but he's not helpful because he's not going to let me like lay the laptop against him. Which is kind of unfortunate. I'm like, if I could do that, it'd be like the perfect stand. That would work. But, instead, he sits on your lap, and then any cat owner will tell you that just means you can't pee until he leaves because he's just you can't. It's the unwritten rule. You don't move the cat once they've graced you with their love. Can't do it.
But see, I'm a teacher, which means that I have a bladder of steel. So...
Yeah, you can give yourself the hall
no
pass.
problem.
You don't, right?
Well, the kids have to be supervised at all times. You can't leave them alone.
That's not going to work. I never thought of that, actually. I might have to get some teachers I know some props then back in the day, because didn't know that.
Trust me, your teachers were very uncomfortable during parts of their workday.
Well, you know what? I think ending on this lovely note of bladders and having to pee, I think this is the perfect time to pause for a break and listen to one of Patrick's puns. Because if that won't make you pee, I don't know what will. Okay, because he's just that good. So we're going to be right back after this word from our non-sponsor. Game All Night is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Be sure to check out tons of other great shows at punchboardmedia.com.
We all go through cycles in our gaming lives, and we learn our lessons the hard way. You play the one-of-a-kind game only to spill something on the table, and only if you're lucky, not ruin the game. Sleeves are a great solution, but all too often they get sticky and gross over time. They serve only to protect the cards in the game and not all of the other bits and pieces. At Game Toppers, we have heard the cries and sneezes for help and have come up with a solution: the Incubator. Using our patented rail system and cutting-edge prototype technology, we have found a way to protect your precious games from the people who play them. The Incubator simply attaches to your rail system of any Game Topper and allows you to play worry-free by providing a sneeze guard and hermetically seal the gloves to keep a protective barrier between players and the game. Combine the Incubator with our new line of sterile sleeves, and you can rest assured that the game will stay safe for many years to come. Each Incubator will be made from the highest quality materials and will feature interchangeable gloves that can be purchased in many sizes and colors so you can customize your set. Look for the Incubator from Game Toppers coming soon. The Incubator, when sleeves aren't enough and your friends are gross.
And welcome back. During the break, I got corrected, ladies and gentlemen. This is not Miss Liz Davidson. This is Dr. Liz Davidson. So, we're going to talk about some premium content now. We have a doctor on. So I have this bump and it's on my left leg. Is that something you can help me with?
It's not that kind. I have a PhD in ancient Christianity, which means that I can tell you about demons.
Okay.
Monks. I actually do teach New Testament sometimes. All and yeah, that sort of thing.
All right. So that's not the ancient, that's just the really old Christianity part, right?
Ancient, yeah. I mean, if it happened after about 800 AD, I don't really care about it.
There you go. Fair enough. After the apple and whatever. Well, it's funny. I did spend pretty much my whole high school career, well, actually K through 11 in a private Christian school. And I found it very odd that I never had to take Latin. So I never would have been in your class. And we didn't even offer it in my school. I don't know if they do now, but they didn't then. But isn't that what you're doing these days?
Yeah, I am a Latin teacher, and I'm actually really excited. So I have been teaching at a private Christian school, although I'm actually secular, and they knew when they hired me. So it's a very progressive Christian school. And I'm actually now moving over to another Latin program. I'm really excited about it because they have over 700 kids in that Latin program. I'm the sixth teacher.
Wow. So you're working with 5 other people just to teach Latin?
Yes. Wow. And so it's also this just really cool program. I'm so excited. They do lots of spoken Latin. They have no textbook. And the classrooms don't have desks.
Interesting.
There's lots of movement and... if you need to write, there's whiteboards that they pass out, but there's nobody who's passed out on their desk or trying to read a phone under it because it's a classroom format that encourages more engagement. I'm really excited to learn all this stuff. My teaching is going to level up in the next couple of years. So.
That sounds pretty awesome. So why is there a need for Latin if it is not a language that's kind of spoken anymore? What's kind of the justification for that many people wanting to learn it, for instance?
So, all right. I mean, I could give you all the reasons it's good for your SAT if you want to be a doctor someday. So I actually don't think that utilitarianism is the best aim of education. I think that Latin is wonderful to learn because of the culture and the history and the art that it exposes you to, the kind of text that you'll eventually learn to read. You can't go into a museum, read a dollar bill, or understand early political philosophy without understanding the classics. Like Machiavelli, classicist. Marx, New Latin. George Washington, there's a sculpture of him from the 1800s of him dressed like the ancient god Zeus, which was actually quite controversial. But, all the way up through the foundation of American government, people were modeling themselves on their ideas about Rome, and they've all been reading the same texts and thinking about the same things. So interesting ideas about classical values have passed on for a long time. If you want to understand mythological references in art, if you want to understand literature, if you want to enjoy a whole range of good literature, Latin's where it's at. And then you read Greek, and that's even better.
Now, somebody who's learning Latin, do you think that, for instance, one of the things that always came up when we were young, we had 2 acceptable versions of a Bible that we could read. We could read King James or the New International Version, right? Because so much of it rested on translation from the original scripts. Do you find that reading things in the original, like Latin and things like that, carries a completely different tone than something that's been translated?
Yes. Well, first of all, don't trust the KJV. Don't do it. The thing that's interesting about reading a language in the original is that you come to understand there's no such thing as a one-to-one translation for any language to another language. So, my students, they'll want to use an English idiom in Latin. It's like they didn't say it like that. That doesn't work that way. These people's minds worked really differently. The way they structured their sentences is different. The kinds of cultural references they make are different. And being able to actually read it in the original gives you access in ways that reading a translation can't. And one thing my first class I ever taught by myself was I was at Yale Div, and I taught Koine Greek to a group of future ministers. And they did not want to be in there because they felt that they could just, read in English. Greek is a requirement. This is a hoop they got to jump through. And I made them do a final project where they translated I picked a bunch of really controversial passages and then had them pick one and compare their translation with two different translations, one that was very literal, one that was super loosey-goosey and kind of on the liberal end, and then one that was quite conservative. And then I had them discuss how they were going to teach it, what kind of congregation they were planning to teach it to, and why their translation mattered. And it was actually a really good experience for everybody. I learned a lot about where they were coming from, and I think they came to appreciate why we had to do the Greek.
Interesting. So it allows you to kind of formulate your own translations and your own opinions on what. And it also goes to show, kind of like you said with Don't Trust the KJV is because you are literally listening to it through his ears. Like that's exactly the way. And maybe it was a nefarious means. Maybe he was trying to be good and convert everything. Like you never know exactly what those motivations were.
No, well, and actually, biblical studies have just changed a lot since the King James Version was made. So, like Revelation, the manuscripts that they use for that are different. They're actually like different biblical manuscript traditions that are now preferred in scholarship.
Would it help me understand it now? Because I never got it when I read through it in the past.
Well, I mean, it's the King James. Honestly, I'd say the King James Version is a great version. It's a great piece of English literature,
right? But
I wouldn't look at it to learn about the biblical world.
Interesting. So what would you recommend then?
I'm all about the NRSV, New Revised Standard Version. It's like the standard in divinity schools. And I'm biased because the RSV, which was before the new RSV, was translated at Yale. And that is where I got my PhD. So
impressive. So you're familiar
with trust me, it's just the next cousin masochism.
I don't remember them teaching that, but okay. So what did you do your dissertation on then? Because now I'm curious.
Okay, so this is super nerdy, but that's fine. I wrote about the sermons of Shenouda of Atrippa, who is a 4th and 5th century monk in Egypt.
Okay.
And he ran like this monastic federation, and he was a real a-hole, just awful. So like you can find all these letters from him. Like he had this community of nuns that did not want to listen to anything that he wanted them to do. And so he would like threaten to cut off their food or like recommend punishments for them. And it was really clear that he was trying to like kind of spy on them, but he only went to visit them one time. And so, you know, the nuns want to keep their own kind of autonomy. And I get that personally. I respect them. So Shenouda didn't. And he got really upset and he decided to like rend his garments in the manner of an Old Testament prophet, like trying to make this big religious gesture of pain and separation. And one of the nuns accused him of stripping. So he basically had to go back to his monastery and try to like control them by sending like male emissaries to like tell them what to do. And I actually really became obsessed with him in a class where I read it. So this is not historical at all, but there's a text called The Life of Shenouda that like it's called hagiography. It's like a saint's life. Okay. And I decided I thought he was hilarious when I was reading. It's like, oh, in the childhood of Shenouda, there was a man possessed by a demon. So he picked up a wooden gong and like beat the demon out of him. Just lots of ridiculous, like violent behavior. I mean, what can I say? You know, I'm easy to please.
It definitely sounds like it. I mean, you know, who's not to say? Is there a game lurking in here at all? Or is that like, no, not at all?
You know what? I think that there could be. I don't know how mechanically you could do it, but the thing that's really interesting about ancient monks is that, and this is true all throughout the ancient Middle East, especially, which is where monasticism started. So when you think about monks, you're like, oh, the name of the rose, like European, it's all exported from the desert. So the thing that's funny about monks, especially the ones who live kind of on their own, is that they have to do this weird dance between being away from society, but also being really visible. Because you can't just go live in the desert and expect to live, right? Somebody has to know you're there. Somebody has to bring your food. In Syria, there are these people called stylites who lived on top of columns. So like, it's like, look at me, I'm literally above you. And maybe like a visible yet significant distance outside of town. So why don't you come sit at the bottom of the pillar and like seek my wisdom? And there's like a bucket where they could like raise and lower stuff. So I feel like there's an interesting game sort of in the tension, right, between getting enough attention to be considered holy, but not so much that you blow it on being an attention seeker. I feel like there's some sort of interesting balancing act in there.
That is definitely because if you get track somewhere.
Because if you get forgotten, it goes really bad too. Like there's this text called The Life of Onofrius where this guy is going out in the desert just looking for monks, and he goes into this like building that he finds, and there's a guy leaned up against the wall, and he's like, "Oh, Holy Father, oh!" And he like goes up and grabs the guy's arm, and the body disintegrates because it's like a desiccated, mummified guy who like died out there in the middle of nowhere.
Just okay. So,
Yeah.
I guess, but you know what? That's where we get beer from. So things can't be all that bad. Just, they go. That's what happens when they go become monks in Europe, though, not in the middle of the desert.
Yes, this is true. But I do really like my monastic alcohols.
Yes, and the Belgian one's the best. They do a good job. Interesting. So this all translates. You're now teaching Latin. So what kind of student is coming into these classes, right? To me, I mean, if you have 700 students and it's no desks, everybody's standing, this sounds a lot more like.
Oh no, they sit on chairs.
They have chairs? So no desks.
Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds a little bit more like an elective environment than it does like you have to do this. What kind of people are coming through the classes?
So the reason that I chose to move jobs, so a little bit, I guess, a background on me as a teacher, not that anybody cares, but so when I finished my PhD, I didn't really know how to turn it into a teaching license. So I joined Teach for America, and you don't get to choose what you teach in Teach for America. So I actually taught special education my very first year. I co-taught math and English classes, and then provided support for students who had learning difficulties. And, help manage their caseloads and decide what accommodations would help them do better in school. And I really appreciated that year. To me, I think a lot of people think Latin is something you're forced to do, something that's kind of old and dusty and fuddy-duddy.
Right.
But I don't really see it that way. I think my classroom is for everyone. I will take any student that wants to be in Latin, and I will try to give them the best educational experience that I can. And I really believe that school should be enjoyable. So this is a nerdy Latin thing, right? But the word ludus in Latin means both school and game.
Okay.
They're synonyms. So, I really am for that in schools. I think my students should have an enjoyable experience. I think that they should experience Latin as something that's lively and not stuffy and not about case endings.
Interesting.
So, I want them to be there because they want to be there.
All right. So now I know what it's like to try to employ the age group that's kind of in high school, just coming out and recently. And it I don't want to say nightmare because everything's an adjustment, but it is this adjustment this time, it seems to be very hard because the value that, the people that age group are placing on like work and jobs and things it's not easy to see because, there's a lot of ghosting and that's fine. And, there's a lot of, if it's not what I want to do, I'm not going to do it. So there's not the school of hard knocks isn't there. Like, if I wanted a job, you had to wash dishes, go wash dishes. That's what you did. If you wanted money, that's how you got it. Right. So it's a completely different environment now. So how have you changed teaching in the last years to try to teach to that student? I'm sure that there have to be challenges.
It's interesting to think about it that way because it's not really how I see the kids that I interact with. So, I started in a Teach for America school, right? So I was teaching kids who really kind of had it rough, and a lot of them were in fact working and maybe placed more emphasis on their job than they did on school because they wanted to make money. They wanted to help support their families. They, were wanting to live these more independent adult lives and did not necessarily see school as the way to that. So it was like a different kind of, trying to, I guess, sell them on the value of what I had to offer. The last school that I taught at was actually a very nice private school where, the students are all going to go to college. Most of them are going to go to pretty fancy colleges, and they're really interested in things like trying to get international travel opportunities. But a lot of them work too. I don't know. I guess I don't see that side of them. For me, the thing is that as the teacher, right, my relationship with students, I think is different because I don't need anything from them. I'm providing the service.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's more about being patient and letting relationships with the kids form because students will work for people that they trust and that they respect. So, if you take the time to build that community and get that mutual respect going, you're going to get a lot more out of the students, and then they'll surprise themselves with what they can do.
Do you find that they're more distracted nowadays, and do they have shorter attention spans? Like, how are you working with that?
They do. So the biggest issue, of course, everybody says this, right, is cell phones.
Sure.
And the thing that's so hard is that their lives are just fundamentally different from ours. And so I'm not okay with excessive cell phone use in my classes. But at the same time, I'm not really okay with like grabbing a kid's cell phone either. So again, that becomes an issue of like conditioning respect. So, my students laugh because when I walk into class, I go, ubi sunt telefona, like, where are your phones? And they know that it's like, oh, non sub natibus, like, not under your butt, non in gremio, not on your lap, and sakulis in your bags. So, like, they know we have a ritual to get them to put their phone in their bag, and it should stay there theoretically for class. So I try to just kind of set up, and the other reason for things like deskless classrooms, right, is if you're supposed to be listening and talking, then there's no space for you to pull out your phone and do stuff. So I just changed the structure.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to, I'm one of the reasons I'm excited about this next job, it's something I've been trying to do already, is kind of changing the structure of my classes to make there be less room for a kid to get distracted at all and think, oh, I'll check my phone. You have to change activities pretty often. Like, I don't let one thing go for more than 15 or 20 minutes, usually in a class. It's a tough thing though, because like those kids, their whole lives are on their phone.
Right.
All of it. Like, they socialize on there. I don't think they sleep because they're like, bing, bing, bing,
And I think that that's kind of the crux of it, right? It's not that, they're constantly distracted by what's going on. I think you're just used to constantly checking it, seeing what's going on, almost like a FOMO, like something might be happening that I don't know about. It's not just I need to be on my phone checking to see what other things are going on, or an input and an output.
So what scares me the most about that, and actually it's one of the reasons I enjoy solo gaming, is that I worry their students don't know how to be alone.
Right.
So, they're so used to just getting that next like, that next ping, that next notification. And like, your phones are designed to be addictive like that. Like, that's not an accident. There's a reason that a lot of people in Silicon Valley don't let their children play with electronics, even if they work in tech. But for me, one of the things I do also like about solo gaming, as opposed to even video gaming, right, where the internet is constantly interrupting even your video game play. So-and-so's online. So-and-so got a trophy. You got a trophy. Check out your trophies that we put online. There's no escape from that attempt to make you think about what other people are doing and wonder what other people are thinking of you. Right. I really like solo gaming the same way I like reading a book. It's like an intensely private experience that like maybe you can talk about with somebody else, but nobody can be there with you. And I think that learning to enjoy your own company is a skill that we're losing, and it's a really tragic one to lose. Like, I go to the movies by myself, I have no problem going to a restaurant by myself. Like, I'm pretty willing, like, if I want to do something and there's no one to do it with me, I'll go by myself. And I feel like a lot of my students don't feel that way because they're never alone.
So would you argue that there are a lot of people who might be natural introverts who are kind of forced into this extroverted kind of society? So it kind of gets them out of that comfort zone too.
Oh yeah. Like, we live in a society that kind of punishes introversion.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I guess maybe an ambivert. I read like an extrovert, but I'm actually introverted. At the end of the day, I've given up a lot of my emotional energy and I need to go home and sleep and recharge and not talk to anyone, hence solo gaming. But I don't think that somebody is inherently more valuable just because they're vocal.
Sure.
Or charming. So one thing I actually try not to do in my classes, I think that students can absorb language even if they don't look like they are. Just because a kid doesn't look like they're listening to you doesn't mean they're not. So you shouldn't be trying to force eye contact. Unless I'm really sure a kid's messing around and we have that relationship, I typically don't cold call.
Okay.
Like, that kind of like embarrassing Johnny, like, the kid's not paying attention.
Trying to catch
I try not to. I try not to do that. Like, really, if I got a problem with a kid like that, we'll talk about it after class because I'm not there to humiliate anybody. But Yeah, I try to have respect for students who need a little space. When I assign group work, I always give people the option to work alone. I try really hard to respect the needs of my students who don't necessarily want to be like, That said, one thing that is lacking in kids this generation actually is presentational skills. Public speaking is dying.
Really?
And yeah, I don't necessarily think that you have to be forced to interact, but everybody should know how to give a formal presentation. Because someday there's going to be a meeting or something where you have to do it.
Or someday you're going to go into a job interview and it's more than one person, because now you're presenting to two people. It's, it gives you an advantage and it gives you a toolbox to play with that if you don't have that. No, interesting. So let's end on a high note, Liz. Dr. Liz, Dr. D. What's the coolest kind of activity that you've got to do in your class? Like you've gotten them to do? I think my favorite thing we've ever done. So I'm always into trouble. Like, I don't know why I haven't got fired yet. So you one time it's okay.
One time I had my students make some shields out of cardboard and then attack each other using Roman battle formations. That was really fun. I usually teach them this like Roman bathhouse game called Trigon, where you just stand in a triangle. It's like advanced catch, but they get really into it. And any day they can be like, "Oh, Dr. D, can we go outside and play Trigon?" And we go play. I had them learn about Roman sacrifices, and then we went outside and sacrificed a piñata in a ritual that they had designed based on what they learned. So the cool thing about Roman sacrifices is that poor people were normally too poor to buy meat. You normally eat a lot of bread and like crappy vegetables, like not even the good kind. So like you go to these public sacrifices because they cook the meat and they serve it to all the people who are there. So I put candy in the piñata, and because you have to look at the organs of the animal and like take the auspices to see if it's like an auspicious sacrifice or if it's a curse and you have to like try again another day, I put like those Dove Promise chocolates with like the little inspirational messages in there. I made them like take the auspices by reading the inside of the Dove Promises, and then we ate all the candy and they were really hyper, but it was fun.
There you go. And then you let them loose on the next class in the list. So.
Yes, I did. I absolutely did. And we've also made curse tablets. Okay. So ancient people used to if you look in like chariot racing areas and stuff, especially like people would curse the other team, like may his chariot break, may the horses fall over, this violent stuff. Wow. But I made them choose either a sports team or an inanimate object and like write a curse in Latin. And like they got to, draw. I ordered some papyrus. Like you can do it on foil because it was often done in like lead. But I just thought the papyrus was fun. So I got these like really hilarious. Like one of them cursed Spotify, and they wrote their Latin in the shape of 3 months for 99 cents. It just made me so happy. And I've let them make music videos in Latin too. So I have the best Latin cover of Skater Boy you're ever going to hear, but I can't show you to you because of privacy.
Well, that's fair, but you have it, so that's all that matters.
Indeed.
People find you if they want to find you on the internet?
So I am Beyond Solitaire pretty much anywhere. So I have a website at beyondsolitaire.net. I'm Beyond Solitaire on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and also Board Game Geek. So awesome. I love talking to people about solo games or gaming in general or just nerd stuff. So I'm around.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun getting to know you and getting to know a little bit more about you. So I think we're gonna call it here, and then I think next week we're gonna play a little game. How does that sound?
I'm always up for a game.
Always up for a game? So you guys will have to tune in next week to see what we play, but I think you're gonna like it, and you might be able to play along. So thanks, Liz, for being on. This was a blast.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure to be here.
So awesome. Thank you, Dan, for providing some lovely refreshments and a little bit of chitter chatter. And I really had a good time with that. And thank you at home for watching. So without further ado, have a good night.
Thanks for watching this week's episode. Join us next week when we play a game with the guest. If you enjoy our content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Be sure to follow us on all forms of social media. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are the best ways possible. Simply find us by searching for Game All Night Show. And of course, check out our website at gameallnightshow.com. This Week and Each Week is made possible through the generous support of donors like these. Be sure to subscribe below and check out our latest videos.
Punchboard Media, where we all
bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.
But it's not Miss Liz Davidson. It's Doctor.
Doctor? I didn't know that.